President Trump calling out the national left-wing media for its obsession with the Russia probe today. In a tweet, the president asked, "Do you notice the fake news mainstream media never likes covering the great and record-setting economic news, but rather talks about anything negative or that can be turned into the negative? The Russian collusion hoax is dead, except as it pertains to the Dems. The public gets it." Joining me now is Congressman Matt Gaetz, who serves on a number of key committees, including Judiciary, Budget, and Armed Services. And Congressman, you pay very close attention to what Robert Mueller is doing with his probe. When is it going to end?
Well, it needs to end. If Robert Mueller has evidence of collusion, let's see it. We've seen no such evidence. In fact, the only evidence that we have seen indicates that the Democratic Party may have been using their funds or was using their funds to pay Russians to go and tell lies about the president. This is what Russia does around the world. They try to discredit democracy by telling lies about candidates in elections. That appears to be the very basis of this dossier. It's why it's so important to not allow the American people to think it has any credit whatsoever. It simply doesn't.
There have been 4 charges that have come out of Mr. Mueller's office. 2 people have pled, and one of them was Papadopoulos. One of them was General Flynn. The other was Papadopoulos, who some people think may have been wired and gone back into the Trump campaign to give some evidence that now Mr. Mueller has. Do you have any knowledge of that at all?
No, there is a theory that the Papadopoulos drinking time in a London pub with an Australian diplomat was the start of the investigation, but that seems far less likely than the investigation being started as a consequence of the Fusion GPS dossier, because the FBI had become so politicized in the Obama administration, and the Fusion GPS company had actually hired the spouse of a senior Justice Department official. That's the far more credible circumstance that led to this whole witch hunt of an investigation.
Well, you're referring to Bruce Orr, whose wife worked for Fusion GPS, which was the group that was hired by the Democratic Committee, by the Hillary campaign, and then they put together this Trump dossier, part of which came from Russian intel, as dysfunctional as it was. But my question is, when Mr. Mueller gets onto that story, because there's no indication to me that he has any interest. He's interested in finding some collusion between Trump and Russia, which he hasn't found. But why isn't he interested in any collusion between the Hillary Clinton campaign and Russia?
Well, that is the very question. It's one of the reasons why more than 20 members of the Judiciary Committee have joined in calling for a second special counsel to evaluate the real claims here. And by the way, we shouldn't pick such a biased team. One of the problems with the Mueller investigation is that he went and essentially assembled the Never Trump board of directors to conduct the investigation. That limits its credibility. I think we ought to have an unbiased look at what's going on with Hillary Clinton. The good news is that that work may very well be happening right now at the Arkansas or at the Little Rock field office of the FBI, a bottom-up investigation far more credible than the top-down approach we've seen leading up to this point.
I assume you're referring to uranium, the Uranium One-oriented indictment. There was a guy named Mark Lambert who has been indicted, 11-count indictment, I believe, which he's denied, of course, that he bribed the Russian, somebody who worked for the Russian organization that took over Uranium One. Part of the deal of Uranium One was that they would never transport out of the U.S. the 20% of U.S. uranium that they got. But this guy was involved in transporting nuclear materials, so the suspicion is maybe he was taking some of this stuff out of the country.
Well, absolutely, and it shows the extent to which bribery and kickbacks seem to have influenced this uranium transaction. The transaction that occurred at the very time that Robert Mueller was at the FBI and Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and they had an obligation to step forward and stop the United States from being hollowed out by these types of interests. At the very same time, you had the Clinton Foundation filling out deposit slips and collecting millions of dollars from Russians. So the whole deal stinks, and we ought to get answers to that very real collusion. And we ought to end this Mueller probe that seems to be going nowhere. You know, we know that Steve Bannon was, of course, giving testimony today to the Intelligence Committee, and I've spoken to Steve Bannon, and he assured me that there was no collusion between the campaign and Russia. The concern is that this probe is going so far beyond its original intent and scope that it may distract us from the important work we have to do for the American people.
Going beyond, but not when it comes to Hillary Clinton and their collusion or alleged collusion with Russia. Congressman Gaetz, thank you very much for coming in. Great to see you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.